So tonight's theme is big things. I'm a psychologist. I'm here to tell you about psychology's big idea. Psychology's really big idea. Now, some people argue, not many, that psychologists have won the science lottery in terms of the thing that we get to study, which is the human mind, the human brain. It's the most complex, self-organizing, computational entity in the universe that we know of. This is something that can imagine things that it has never seen and convey that to a copy of itself, another brain, through an intricate exchange of abstract symbols that we call language. It's capable of thinking what if, thinking about the origins of the universe, making predictions that it tests against data brought back by spaceships that it built. It's a truly extraordinary entity. It's capable of producing symphonies, poetry, large hadron colliders, and making those little Father Christmases that play rocking around the Christmas tree for as little as £1. A truly extraordinary device. Now, the closest pound shop to us here is over on Gray's Inn Road, and it's called Pound Plus. Pound Plus, and underneath it says, everything for £1 or more. Well done, Pound Plus. A bit like Harrods in that respect. So psychologists have been given this responsibility, this privilege of studying the human mind, the human brain, this pinnacle of evolutionary adaptation. Psychology's big thing, this big thing is that people are a little bit rubbish. Psychology's big thing is that people are a little bit rubbish. Now, of course, Freud got in there early with the suggestion that everything we do, even the good stuff, is in fact motivated by our intense need to defend against dark internal conflicts and drives. So you might think you've done a really good thing, you've helped a needy person across the street. This is just a defense against your urge to shove them in front of the bus. Your diligence at work is just a defense against your urge to kill your mum and take her role, or kill your dad and take his role, or kill them both and take the little Father Christmas that they bought last year. And the wonderful thing about the Freudian framework is that we're too stupid to even realise that this is the case. Even after 20 years of intensive psychoanalysis up in St John's Wood, we'd only begin to glimpse how evil and vile we are. The only thing we would know for certain is that the reason we think we're doing something isn't the reason we're doing it. So psychology's big idea is that people are a little bit rubbish. Another example I quite like is something called cognitive dissonance. This is the observation that people can't abide having two beliefs which are contradictory and will do everything, including distorting their reason and perception of the world, to avoid that happening. And this was a term coined by a psychologist called Festinger. And I like these studies which took place before, let's say, ethics committees really got going. Ethics committees, for those who don't know, are panels of scientists and lay people who decide whether the research we want to do is ethical. And they just said, so Dr. Festinger, interesting work. What methods will you be using in your work? And he'd have said, secret infiltration. Oh, secret infiltration. Will you be getting informed consent from your participants? No. So what Festinger and his colleagues did was to infiltrate a cult in the States who believed that the universe was controlled by superior intellect aliens. And they also believed that the world would be destroyed by these aliens, for reasons which aren't clear, before dawn on the 21st of December 1954. But that they, the cult, would be rescued by spaceships at midnight before this final conflagration. So you can imagine they all gathered in this house together with the psychologists who had infiltrated them, and it must have been extraordinarily tense. As the afternoon wore on, the conversations get more stilted, and as those final minutes approach towards midnight, complete silence in the house, huge amount of tension, barely breathing, and the second hand comes round and hits 12, and nothing happens. So they wait for a moment or two, and nothing continues to happen. Then brilliantly, one member of the cult goes off to find another clock, which has a slightly earlier time, and once again they sit there and wait for the world to end, and nothing happens. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it won't be a huge shock to you that the world didn't come to an end in 1954. In fact, it comes to an end in 2012 with the rise of the Charlie Sheen people. But did members of this cult, realising what was going on, did they think, oh, now that's a bit embarrassing, because it turns out the thing that I really strongly, devoutly believed in is a pile of old nonsense? Or did they say, oh, you know, I'm a bit cross now that I sold my house and gave all the money to the cult? They did not. After what must have been a fairly tense 2 hours, message came from the aliens to say that they were being so impressed, the aliens, had been so impressed by the devotion shown by the cult, they decided to spare them and the Earth, again, for reasons unknown. And in that moment, those tight shoes of cognitive dissonance were removed, and some members of the cult believed more strongly in the premises of the cult, this strange nonsense, than they had done before this ludicrous failure to predict what was going to occur. So psychology's big idea is that people are a little bit rubbish and a bit evil. So you're probably all very familiar with what's come to be known as the Stanford Prison Experiment. This was an experiment run by psychologists who are interested in how we come to adopt social roles, how we come to live those social roles. And they did personality tests on large numbers of students and picked the most normal ones that they could find across all these personality dimensions, the most normal people. And they randomly allocated them either to being prisoners or prison officers to go into this mock prison that they built in the psychology department's basement over in Stanford. Stratford prison experiment, very much ongoing, you'll agree. So again, you can ask yourself, where were the ethics committee here? So, Dr. Zimbardo, how long will you be keeping people locked up night and day and night? And he said, 2 weeks. The guards, will they be armed at all? Only with clubs? What could go wrong? What could go wrong? Well, of course, famously, it went terribly wrong very quickly. Within 5 days, they had to abandon the experiment because the guards had become so abusive towards the prisoners. Shaving heads, strip searches, as you would. No, this is the implication, as you would. They picked extremely normal people, and within 5 days, some would say unseemly haste, people degenerated into this level of behaviour. And this is, of course, what psychologists would argue, that we need to study conditions and situations in which people behave badly, and to study human mistakes and error, because it gives us insight into the good stuff, the creativity, the Large Hadron Collider, the poetry, the little Father Christmases. And one example that's given is if you're watching a TV which is working perfectly, you might enjoy the programmes, but you don't get a real sense of how the thing works. It's when it goes on the blink, it begins to give you information about the processes underlying it. At least that's what psychologists would tell you, but the secret is psychologists are exactly like everybody else. They like nothing better than to show that someone else is a bigger idiot than they are. Thank you very much. Always read the label.